Wow, what a weekend that was. Silverstone just served up, well, pure chaos for the 2025 Tissot British Grand Prix. We had crashes, incredible comebacks, and honestly, an outcome nobody really saw coming.
Absolutely. It was the kind of race that just, reminds you why you watch. It pushed everyone, riders, teams, the track itself, right to the edge.
Okay, then, let's get into it. We're diving deep into the source material you've gathered. We've got the transcripts from the pre-race chats, the post-race press conferences from MotoGP's YouTube, and also that race recap article from Motorsports by Alex.
Right. And our mission here is basically to cut through all that action and noise. We'll walk you through the twists and turns, pull out the really key insights, the surprising bits, all straight from those sources.
Think of it as your fast track, yeah. Your shortcut to knowing exactly what went down at Silverstone.
Exactly. So first things first, you really have to understand the place itself. Silverstone. It's a monster of a circuit.
It really is unique, isn't it? Built on that old RAF base, it's got this incredibly fast-flowing feel. We're talking, what, nearly 6 kilometers long?
Yeah, about 3.66 miles, 18 corners, 10 right, 8 left. Proper old school in some ways, even though it's hosted the GP since '77.
And that layout, being so long and fast, it really stresses the bikes, doesn't it?
Oh, hugely. The sources always mention high tire wear and high fuel consumption as big factors there. But this year, the conditions just cranked everything up to 11.
How so?
Well, it was cool. Only 16 degrees Celsius ambient temp, cloudy skies. But the big thing was the wind. Really strong, gusty wind. One rider actually called it scaz, which apparently means, like, erratic. Hard to predict.
Right, you could almost see it catching the bikes sometimes, made everything much harder. But the sources did say there were still places to pass.
Oh, yeah, definitely. They pointed to turn 3, turn 6, and then that whole final complex, turns 15 and 16. Takes guts, but yeah, overtaking was definitely on the cards.
And we saw plenty of guts in Saturday's sprint race. That really kind of set the stage, didn't it?
It absolutely did. Marc Marquez, he was on this incredible roll, looking for sprint win number 7 in a row. But lap 2, turn 3, that exact spot we just mentioned, bang, mistake.
And his brother Alex was right there to pounce.
Wasted no time. Swept right around the outside after Mark ran wide, took the lead, and just didn't look back. Second career sprint win for him, and his second sprint win at Silverstone.
Wow. And that closed the gap in the championship, too.
Yep. Brought it down to just 19 points between the brothers. So yeah, Mark's sprint streak was finally broken.
But others had strong sprints, too, right? It wasn't just about the Marquez brothers.
Not at all. Marco Bezzecchi, he was impressive. Came from way back on the grid to finish 4th. Best sprint of his season. The sources even mentioned his new mullet seemed to be giving him confidence.
Huh. Gotta love the paddock details.
And Fabio Di Giannantonio, DG, he finished 3rd from 7th. Another sprint podium for him, his second ever.
But like you said about the conditions, it wasn't smooth sailing for everyone.
Definitely not. Pecco Bagnaia, tough sprint for him. Sources said he was battling setup issues, couldn't get the front feeling right, and apparently his rear tire was completely shot after just 4 laps.
Ouch.
Yeah. And Franco Morbidelli, he had issues with his whole shot device, and he got a 3-place grid penalty for the main race for slow riding. Second time that's happened to him.
Rough start to the weekend for Frankie.
And Pedro Acosta, too. Celebrating his 21st birthday, but the sources noted it was a pretty challenging weekend overall for him on track.
So the sprint shook things up. Going into Sunday's main Grand Prix, who were the riders themselves tipping?
Well, this was interesting. Both Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia, the top 2 guys, had actually flagged Alex Marquez as the favorite for the whole weekend. Said he's really strong on his bike in Silverstone's fast right-handers.
And Alex backed that up in the sprint, obviously. But could he do the double? Win both races?
That was the big question, wasn't it? The sources confirmed he'd never actually managed that combination of sprint win and GP win in the Premier class before. So history was potentially on the line.
And other storylines swirling around, too. Marc Marquez hadn't actually won the British GP itself since, 2014? A long time.
Yeah, a surprisingly long gap for him there. And Fabio Quartararo, he was on pole for the 3rd race running. But even he was playing down his chances for the main race, said a podium would be a tall order, given Yamaha's struggles with grip and chatter in the sprint.
Always managing expectations.
And don't forget, for Min Aldeguer, this was his very last chance to become the youngest ever MotoGP winner to beat Marc Marquez's record. Added pressure for the youngster.
Now, a huge point of discussion before the race, according to the sources, was tires. That always seems to be the case at Silverstone, but especially this year.
Absolutely. Particularly the front tire choice. The medium rear seemed pretty much locked in for most people for the longer GP distance. But the front, That cold, windy weather made it a real headache.
So soft or medium front, what was the thinking?
Well, some leaned towards the soft front. The idea was it would generate heat faster and hold it better in those cool, gusty conditions. You need that front grip confidence.
But softs have downsides, right? Especially over race distance.
Big time. Less stable under braking, mainly, and some bikes had shown worrying signs of the soft front graining, basically tearing up in the sprint.
Yeah.
But Jack Miller, his perspective was interesting. He kind of felt the soft front actually removed some variables, took the guesswork out of managing the temperature in that weird wind.
Interesting take. Risk versus reward, as always.
Exactly. Oh, and a little side note from the sources. Richard Hammond, the TV presenter, he was there, his first ever MotoGP race.
Oh, really? What did he think?
He apparently described it as visceral, which, yeah, sums it up pretty well, doesn't it? The noise, the speed.
Totally. Okay, let's get to Sunday, race day. Because if Saturday was dramatic, Sunday was just, well, on another level.
It kicked off instantly. Lights out, Alex Marquez again, gets an absolute flyer from the front row, leads into turn one, looked like a repeat of the sprint start.
But only for a few seconds.
Unbelievable. Still in turn one, Alex just tucked the front. Gone. The sources said it happened with no warning at all. Front end just folded. Race seemingly over before it even got going for the sprint winner.
Just like that, the lead changes?
Marc Marquez inherits P1, Quartararo second, Bagnaia third. But the chaos wasn't over. Not even close.
What happened next?
Further back, Franco Morbidelli and Alexis Spargaro tangled and crashed together down at the Vale chicane.
Oh, no. And that
Oil on track, right on the racing line. And then, almost immediately after, as if things weren't dramatic enough, the new leader, Marc Marquez, went down, crashed at turn 11.
You couldn't make this stuff up. The top two in the championship, both down within the first lap, having predicted Alex would dominate. Madness.
Pure madness. But that oil spill from the Morbidelli-Spargaro crash became the crucial factor. Race direction had no choice but to throw the red flag.
And because they hadn't completed 3 laps.
Exactly. The rules meant everyone was eligible for the restart, including both Marquez brothers who had crashed out.
The sources called it a get-out-of-jail-free card, didn't they?
Absolutely. Especially for Mark and Alex.
Mm.
Huge slice of luck. Though it wasn't all good news for them. The sources noted they had to switch to their spare number 2 bikes for the restart, which Mark later said felt very different.
Right. So reset, grid forms again, 19 laps now. How did the second start go?
This time, it was Pecco Bagnaia who got the whole shot. But Fabio Quartararo wasn't hanging around, quick move into lead at turn 3.
And behind him, more action.
Oh yeah, Jack Miller's was flying early on. Passed Marc Marquez at turn 3, then got Bagnaia at Brooklands. Suddenly, it was a Yamaha 1-2, Quartararo leading Miller.
What about Marc Marquez?
He ran wide at Kopp's corner shortly after, lost a spot to Zarco. It wasn't looking smooth for the factory Ducatis at all.
Both of them struggling.
Yeah, both Marc and Bagnaia had separate moments running wide at Kopp's, actually. Pushed them way down the order, like 9th and 10th at one point.
And then Bagnaia's nightmare weekend finally ended properly.
Unfortunately, yes. Crashed out again, this time at Luffield Corner. Just a weekend to forget for the reigning champ.
So Quartararo leading, Miller second, who was making moves behind them.
The chase pack started to form. Bezzecchi got himself up to 3rd, Zarco was 4th, and Alex Marquez, incredibly, had recovered to 5th after his earlier crash.
And you mentioned the tire choice earlier. Weren't a lot of those front guys on the soft front?
Good point, yeah. Quartararo, Miller, Bezzecchi, and Zarco all on that soft front. The big question mark hanging over them was whether it would last the full 19 laps.
But Bezzecchi seemed to be making it work for him.
He really found his groove. He and Zarco both got past Miller. Then Bezzecchi just started laying down fastest laps, relentlessly closing the gap to Quartararo.
It looked like Fabio had it under control, though, managing the lead. Looked like a potential fairy tale win from pole, but then disaster.
Oh, it was absolutely heartbreaking for Quartararo and Yamaha. Leading comfortably, looking good, and then suddenly a technical problem.
What actually happened?
His rear ride height device got stuck down. He was trying everything, visibly fighting the bike, trying to get it to disengage, but nope. Had to pull into the pits and retire from the lead.
Gutted. Absolutely gutted for him, and that handed the lead straight to
Marco Bezzecchi. Just like that, he inherited the lead. Massive moment for him and for Aprilia.
Incredible turn of events. So Bezzecchi leads, Zarco second, but the fight was on for 3rd.
Oh yeah. With Bezzecchi pulling a gap on Zarco, all eyes turned to the battle for the final podium spot. It was heating up massively between Marc Marquez, Miller, Morbidelli, and Acosta.
And the sources really highlighted that last lap scrap, didn't they? especially between Morbidelli and Marc
It
Marquez.
was classic hard MotoGP racing right to the flag. Involved Marc, Morbidelli, and Alex Marquez too, right on their tails.
Take us through it.
Okay, so on the final lap, Morbidelli dives past Marc at turn 3. Marc cuts straight back underneath him. Morbidelli gets him back at Copse. Then Marc pulls off this brilliant cutback move at Stowe Corner to retake third. Morbidelli tries one last lunge at Vale, runs a bit wide on the exit.
And Marc.
Marc just forced his way back through on the inside run to the line. The sources said he literally shoved his way back through to snatch P3 by inches. Alex Marquez finished like right behind them. Unbelievable finish.
Marc even said afterwards it was a great battle, but admitted he was really struggling with his front tire by then. Just pure grit to hang on.
Vintage Marc Marquez fight, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Especially after crashing twice earlier in the day.
Incredible resilience. So let's just confirm that final podium after all that chaos.
Marco Bezzecchi takes the win, his first ever victory with Aprilia. Johan Zarco makes it second place for Honda, and Marc Marquez salvaged that incredible third place for Ducati.
A massive, massive result for Bezzecchi and Aprilia. Hugely significant.
Huge. Aprilia's first win of the year. And it meant we've had 5 different winners in the last 5 races this season. But get this stat the sources pulled out. It was the 11th different winner in the last 11 MotoGP races held at Silverstone.
11 different winners in 11 races. That's insane. Just shows how unpredictable that track can be.
Mind-blowing statistic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Zarco's second place? That was big for Honda, too.
Yeah, gave them back-to-back podiums. Hasn't happened for a while.
Not since Marc Marquez himself did it back in 2021. Zarco was really happy in the press conference, said it proved Honda's potential in the dry, especially on a fast track like Silverstone. He mentioned following Bezzecchi really helped him manage his pace and his tires.
Good strategy. And who else picked up points in the end?
Okay, rounding it out. Acosta P6, Miller faded to P7, Luca Marini P8, which actually equaled Honda's best result of the season so far, Aldeguer P9, Di Gianantonio P10, Mir P11, Vinales P12, Fernandez P13, Rins P14, and Brad Binder got the last point at P15. Quite a mix in there.
And the post-race press conference sounds like it was pretty revealing, judging by the transcripts.
Oh yeah, hearing the riders unpack that race was gold. Bezzecchi was really emotional, you could tell. Talked about going through hard times, but how much Aprilia's trust meant. He emphasized how rewarding the win felt, because he'd been so involved in developing the bike, first time he'd led that process. Thanked his supporters, even gave a little nod to the doubters.
Nice to see that emotion. What about Zarco?
Zarco focused on how crucial that second start was, and his decision to stick with the soft front tire. Said it helped him find his rhythm quickly.
And Marc Marquez must have had a lot to say after his roller coaster day.
He was incredibly open, actually. He half-joked that his family must be the luckiest people in the paddock because the red flag saved both him and Alex. But he also admitted he was really angry with himself for his first crash because he said the bike felt amazing right up until he went down.
But the second bike wasn't the same?
Not even close, according to him. He flat out called the feeling on his number 2 bike for the restart a disaster. Said the tires felt completely different. Admitted he made another mistake running wide at Copse again. But after that, he just decided to, quote, minimize the drama and focus on bringing it home, especially seeing he was ahead of Alex and Pecco on track.
Did he have any idea why he crashed the first time?
He wondered if it was maybe just a sudden gust of wind at turn 11, given how tricky it was. But he said he definitely needs to analyze the data to figure out why Bike 1 felt so good and Bike 2 felt so bad. Still, despite the disaster feeling, he was clearly relieved and happy to grab that podium.
And he had that really bizarre quote about hitting the barrier.
Yeah. He said headbutting the soft barrier during his slide felt like being at a water park. It gives you a sense of the impact, I guess. But yeah, he kept stressing how much that red flag was just a massive help.
All those incidents, Alex's crash, Quartararo's technical, inevitably brought up the ride height devices again in the press conference, didn't they?
Yeah, it's definitely still a hot topic among the riders. The sources showed there are still mixed feelings. Some riders think they're okay, even helpful, making the bikes more stable, especially in the wind, like they had at Silverstone.
But safety concerns remain.
Definitely. Some riders feel they can make braking strange and potentially unsafe at certain race starts. There was even a suggestion floated that maybe the riders should vote on which tracks they're allowed, mentioning Le Mans as maybe somewhere they shouldn't be used.
Interesting debate to watch. And finally, what did the riders make of Silverstone itself after such a brutal weekend?
They all seem to agree it's a beautiful track, but incredibly difficult, especially in those conditions. But the really interesting thing they noted in comparing it to recent years was how close all the manufacturers seemed this time.
Not just Ducati dominating.
Exactly. They specifically mentioned Ducati, Honda, Aprilia, Yamaha, all being genuinely competitive at points during the weekend. One writer said last year it felt like all Ducatis at the front, but this year was different.
So the conditions, the wind, the tire challenges really leveled the playing field.
That seemed to be the consensus.
Hmm.
Those factors really contributed to the mixed results and allowed different packages to shine when things weren't perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, and Alex Marquez also brought up safety again, specifically about turn one where he crashed,
Yeah.
saying the wall feels too close and they need more gravel runoff there.
Okay, let's zoom out. This is where it gets really interesting for me. Looking at everything the sources told us, all this drama, all these insights, what does it actually mean for MotoGP right now?
I think it hammers home just how incredibly finely balanced the championship is. Just being fast isn't enough, especially when things get tricky, like they did at Silverstone. You need that resilience. Look at Marc Marquez, crashing twice but still fighting for a podium.
Right.
You need adaptability, the skill to find pace when the conditions are weird, like Bezzecchi and Zarco managed. You need smart strategy, especially with those tire calls. And yeah, let's be honest, the sources shows sometimes you just need a dose of luck. That red flag was pure fortune for the Marquez brothers.
So the chaos wasn't just random spectacle. It flowed directly from that tough track, the unpredictable weather, and just the sheer pressure pushing everyone to and sometimes beyond their limits.
Precisely. And the fact we saw an Aprilia win, a Honda on the podium, a Yamaha leading strongly before a technical issue, different factories genuinely battling it out, that's huge. The riders themselves picked up on it, saying it felt different to last year. It really suggests that things like the concessions, plus the hard work from Aprilia and Honda, are genuinely shaking things up, creating this amazing, unpredictable competition.
So we've really dug into the sources on Silverstone. We've covered the track, the sprint race drama, the absolutely bonkers main event, and got those raw reactions from the riders themselves.
Yeah, it was definitely a weekend that reminded us just how quickly everything can flip in MotoGP, whether it's the weather, a tiny technical failure, or just pushing that fraction too hard.
And thinking about that, it leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? After seeing a really demanding track like Silverstone, combined with those tricky conditions, creates so much unpredictability and allow different manufacturers to really challenge. How much do you think weather and specific track characteristics could continue to disrupt the established order and really shake up this championship fight as we go through the rest of the season?